Wankers, my name is Jeff, you're watching TrashWerks, and today we are going to be going over motorcycle lane positions, where you can expect to find these motorcycles in their lanes, and most importantly, how to not be a complete tool around a motorcycle. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different. Normally I make my videos for motorcyclists. This one's going to be primarily aimed at car drivers. However, a lot of this knowledge can also apply to new riders. So if you are a newer rider, or even maybe someone who just hasn't really put a lot of thought into lane positioning, you know, keep watching. There's going to be information for you there as well. It's going to explain sort of the different reasonings behind why you'd pick one position over another, which is going to be pretty valuable, especially if you're new. Again, most of this is designed for car drivers, so they have a better understanding on where to expect us and why we are in the places that we're at. So just keep that in mind. Now, as I get into the video, one thing I do want you to sort of pay attention to is where the front wheel of my motorcycle is, because that's ultimately what I'm talking about today, is lane positioning, which is what part of the lane that you would be riding in. Thank you for your signal. I very much appreciate your signal. You might be thinking to yourself, lane positioning, what do you mean? I'm either in the lane or I'm not. And well, as a truck driver, yeah, that's basically the gist of it. But if you haven't noticed, motorcycles, they're a little bit smaller than cars and trucks. And so we have a couple more options on where we can fit into the lane itself. Look at this happy little Miata. And before I go over why we would be in a different part of the lane, first I think it's important to go over what are those three different lane positions. And I'm going to do that when we come up to the next stoplight, because that's going to illustrate a couple of very important pieces of information. Okay, so this gives me a good opportunity to explain the different lane positions. And it's pretty simple. We usually break it down into three different sections. We've got a left, a middle, and a right. Now, an even easier way to think of it is, if we look at this Volkswagen ID4 in front of me, we can think of it as where the driver's side tire is, the license plate, and the passenger side tire is. And typically you're going to find bikes usually where one of the tires are, either left or right. There's a couple of different schools of thought on which exact side a bike should be on, but generally speaking, they're going to be either on the left or the right. Now, why wouldn't they be in the center where that license plate is? Well, if we look directly below that, and down here, we can see all these fun little spots. And all those fun little spots are oil. Some of it's water, some of it is coolant, but for the most part, it's going to be oil. Cars do leak oil, and oil doesn't really help the traction of your motorcycle tires. In fact, when it rains, that oil that is embedded into the asphalt is actually going to come up to the top, and it's going to make it extra slippery. So think of both water and oil together. So motorcycles will generally avoid that. Again, they'll be on one side or the other. There will be occasions where a motorcycle has to ride down the center, and I'll go over that a little bit later as well. But for the most part, again, expect to see them on either the left side or the right side. Now, beyond just the oil itself that accumulates in the center, another reason that motorcycles will ride on either the left or the right side, or again, where the tires are, is because tires will clear off road debris. If there's a spill of any kind of dirt or gravel or mulch or anything like that in the middle of the lane, you'll see divots where the tires go, where that has cleared out all of that debris. Tires just naturally do that as they drive along surfaces. In fact, you might find some dead zones in intersections where no one drives, and you'll see that there's an accumulation of dirt and dust and debris that just piles up there because no one ever drives over that section. I'll actually show you a video of what that looks like here. See? Look at all that trash there. No one's driving in that section of road, so trash just accumulates. So, generally speaking, as a rider and as a driver, you can expect to and should be driving where car tires should be. Because the center, and if you just watch the rest of this video, you'll see it's pretty dark with oil. Whereas wherever the car tires are, it's likely to be the cleanest part of the road, and a clean road is a road with traction. Same thing applies for when it's raining out. And once it finishes raining and it starts to dry off, the contact patches of where the tire is on cars is going to be what dries first before the center of the lane. So the next time it rains out and you start to see it dry up, if you look down where those tires are on those two strips of lane, that's going to be where the driest part of the pavement is. But there will be times where riding through the center is a better option. There's some really poorly maintained roads where over the tire tracks, there's going to be a lot of potholes. In fact, I'll show you exactly what that looks like here. This is now future Jeff, and we are coming up on a stretch of road that is pretty rough on both sides of the road, and it's actually nicer to ride in the center. So if we look here on the left and the right side, we see tons of potholes, patched and not patched. So in this particular stretch of road, I'm actually going to sit in the center. So as you can see, it's pretty rough on either side of the lane. So riding in the center, even though there's likelihood of oil being there, you know, if it's dry out, I'd much rather be on flat pavement than rugged pavement. Just understand the basics, left or right side of the lane. That's the simplest I can put it. Now, in terms of which side a biker should be on, again, it varies. There's a couple of different schools of thought on this. The general three things that I'd say a motorcyclist is going to consider when choosing their lane position is going to come down to, one, road condition. Now, the other two things that a rider would consider when choosing their lane position is going to be visibility. How visible are you given your circumstance? So in this case, where I'm on a two-lane road, I've got traffic on my left, which is typically going to be going faster than the lane that I'm in, and I have turn-ons from both a median as well as from the right-hand side of the road. I'm going to want to be sort of where I am now, on the driver's side position. Mainly because from visibility standpoint, that makes me more visible to cars behind me on the left-hand side of the road. It's also going to make me more visible to anyone that's trying to pull out from the right of the road, since I stick out further. And again, it'll change based on your situation. You know, if you, let's say you're on the highway and you're in the right lane, sort of like how like I am now, but there's a lot of traffic merging on from the right, more so than on the left, then I'd probably move my position to the right-hand side so that I can be seen by merging traffic, because they're more likely to come into my lane than traffic on my left. But again, as we're here at another stop, we look at the left tire, the right tire, and what's in between them? A bunch of oil on the asphalt. But those are all generalizations about visibility. You know, it's ultimately going to come down to where you think you're going to be most visible at as a rider. But again, since we're smaller, we can't be everywhere at once. So there's going to be instances where we're sacrificing visibility from one direction so that we can be more visible in another. And again, typically me, personally, I like to be visible where I'm most expecting someone to merge into my lane from. That doesn't mean that someone from the other side isn't going to merge into my lane as well. It's just that it's more likely going to be, again, let's say if I'm on a highway next to an on-ramp, the on-ramp is more likely to merge into my lane than someone from the fast lane. Doesn't mean they're not going to merge in from the fast lane, it just means it's more likely they're going to come from my right than my left. And so, as a car driver, how that should translate to you is that if you see a gap and you're not quite sure if there's a motorcycle there or if there isn't one, assume that there is. If you can't see, if it's not clearly visible to you, just assume someone's there, because it's a whole lot better to miss your turn than it is to run into a motorcyclist. Okay, and the third thing, beyond visibility, that a biker is going to be considering when they're choosing their lane position is going to be an escape route. You know, where can I go if I need to escape? If someone is coming up way too quickly behind me and I think they're going to rear end me, where can I go? And in this case, if I'm on the right-hand side of the lane, it's going to be a lot easier for me to squeeze up between that van and this Murano than it is for me to go all the way to the left around that side of the Murano. So that's an escape route. Same thing applies for in traffic. You know, if I'm expecting someone to merge into my lane, what directions of escape do I have? Can I go forward between cars? Can I go to the other side of the lane to escape that way? So that's a good synopsis on what bikers are going to be considering with their lateral lane position, so left to right. You know, what's the road condition like? What's my visibility like? And where are my escape routes at? Where can I go to if I can't brake quick enough, or if someone's going to come at me? What options do I have there? Okay, so we've covered the left and right positions of where a motorcycle might be, the lateral positions within a lane that you might expect a motorcycle to be. What about the longitudinal aspect of it? You know, the front and back. Well, obviously, motorcycles are pretty short. They've got a front wheel and a back wheel. Usually wheelbases are under 7 feet for most things, so they're not very long. That being said, you know, how should you, as a motorcyclist, treat the space in front of and behind your bike? And then also as a car driver, how should you treat that space both in front of and behind a bike's tires? So first, I'll explain this from the motorcyclist perspective, because that's going to give you an understanding as a car driver on why they're doing what they're doing. So as a motorcyclist, you're not going to want to tailgate someone. Cars can stop quicker than a motorcycle can. It's really easy for them to do it. They have 4 tires, 4 things contacting the road. They've got 4 sets of brakes. Motorcycles, you've got 2. And most motorcycles, you're only really going to be effective with 1 of those 2. As a motorcyclist, you're not really going to be tailgating someone. You should actually stay further back than you would in a car. Because again, your braking performance isn't that great, especially compared to a car, unless you're a highly skilled braker, which takes a lot of time to really discover exactly how much you can do and what your rider aids are doing. It's going to be really hard for you to brake more effectively than a car in an emergency situation. So stay further back than you would in a car, so you have extra time to stop, so you have extra time to find an escape route if you need to find an escape route. Hello, brother. So now that we know as a biker, you know, how far someone is going to be, and the general rule of thumb, if you're a biker or if you're a car driver, is to count distances by Mississippis. So I'm going to look at the car in front of me. I'm going to pick a landmark that they're going to cross, and I'm going to count the amount of seconds it takes for my front wheel to catch up to that. In a car, generally speaking, it should be about 2 Mississippis. In a motorcycle, I like to say between 2 and 3. Again, just to give myself extra time in case I need to escape. So we'll use the traffic light up here, the line on the ground for this Murano up here. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. That's a solid 2 Mississippis right there. Depending on how I see someone driving, depending on what the traffic looks like, I may be more or I may be less inclined to stay at 2 or 3. Motorcycling bare minimum, you should be 2. Now that we understand motorcycle follow distances and why they're going to be where they're at, how does that translate to you as a car driver? Well, you're going to expect to see them further back. So if you see traffic that is slower than you and the motorcycle in front of the motorcycle, and you're wondering why that motorcyclist isn't tailgating them, well, it's because they don't want to rear end them. So the last thing you want to do as a car driver is tailgate the motorcyclist. If you're expecting motorcyclists to be giving themselves extra space due to their braking distance, what you should do is give them extra space, because they may not be able to brake in time. They may not be able to make their escape route. Now, on the other hand, if you're looking to merge in front of a motorcycle, and you notice they're giving a lot of extra forward space, now you know why they're doing it. The last thing that they want you to do is to merge in front of them without giving them all that extra space that they're working so hard to have. Thank God for the shade. So now we know with motorcycles, they're going to be giving themselves extra space forward and backwards. That's going to apply for in motion. It especially applies for at a stop. You'll always see bikers stopping further back from the car in front of them than you'd expect in a car. And the main reason is, again, 1, to give them that escape route, so that if someone is coming up behind them and they think they're going to get rear-ended, they have space to maneuver where they need to maneuver. But 2, it's also going to be because bikers get squished between cars. It happens. They'll get sandwiched in. If someone rear-ends a biker between a car, that bike is not going to stop the rear-ender the same way that a stopped Honda CR-V would, or a stopped F-150 would. That bike's just going to keep going forward with the biker on it, and they're going to be smushed. They get sandwiched between them. And the severity of those crashes are usually a lot worse for a bike than it would be for a car or a truck. So they always give themselves extra room so that if they do get rear-ended, hopefully they're able to have their wheel turned in such a way that they're going to be going between cars rather than into the back of one. And so as a car driver, if you're coming up to a motorcyclist at a stop, give them an abundance of rearward extra space. One, for visibility's sake. It makes it so that the field of view of an upcoming driver isn't blocked by you, so they can easily see that biker a lot better. And then two, so that if you get rear-ended and you get pushed forward, you're not bumping into that bike nearly as much as you would be if you were further back. So the most you need to know as a car driver, whether you are in motion or coming to a stop, give a biker extra space. And if there's anything that I want car and truck drivers to understand about motorcycles and why you need to give them that benefit of the doubt on where they're going to be and how much space to give them, it's because every single kind of accident that a motorcyclist can have has the potential and the increased likelihood of being much more severe than the equivalent accident for a car or a truck. You know, if I'm in a car and I rear end the person in front of me at 20 miles an hour difference of speed, you know, my airbag's going off, I might be totaling my car, it's rough, but for the most part, I'm most likely coming out of that pretty unscathed. Now, if I'm a motorcyclist and I rear end someone at 10 miles an hour, I'm likely going to be at the bare minimum falling off my bike. And if I do fall off my bike, there's always a likelihood that I'm going to fall on my head. And helmet or not, there's a potential for a brain injury there. So if that's what happens at 10 or 15 miles an hour, you know, if you're brake checking a biker and you're going 45 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour on the highway or a state road, that's life-threatening for them. Even excluding the potential head injury from falling and hitting your head, do you want to fall on the road at 45 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour, geared up or not? I don't think anyone wants to get up to highway speeds and just jump out of their car. It's not a fun time. And even something as simple as just dropping your bike in a parking lot, and this happens with new riders especially, if they come to a stop in a position that they're not used to yet, or in a weird position, they have the potential to drop their bike. And think about falling off of a bicycle. It's already not pleasant. And then consider the fact that lightweight motorcycles are usually about 300 to 350 pounds. And that's just between your legs. So imagine falling with that on top of you. Some of the mid-sized bikes, this bike in particular is 450 pounds. And then all of those cruisers that you see, think of like Harleys, that kind of traditional cruiser bike, those are 500, 600, 700 pounds, depending on which one exactly you get. So having that fall, even when you're stopped, is going to be a worse time than any kind of accident that you can have in a car at the same speed. So you should always give a biker more space, assume a biker is going to be there, because even minor accidents that you might get into with a biker, it has the increased potential to be so much worse than if you did that with a car. So if there's one thing I want you to do as a car driver, it's give bikers space. Assume they're there if you can't see and can't tell, and just play it safe. Miss your turn, miss your exit. It'll be a whole lot better than hitting someone, running into them, causing them injury. You know, just play it safe. Now, a little bonus tip, or a little bonus topic rather, that I wanted to cover is going to be lane filtering and lane splitting. If you don't know what that is, it's basically when a biker goes between cars, specifically onto the lane dividers. Let's give you a quick example here. If I was riding on this yellow line here, that would be lane splitting. And if traffic is stopped at, let's say, a stoplight, and I wanted to go up between cars to get to the front of that stoplight, that is lane filtering. Now, depending on where you're at, that might be legal. And I'm specifically talking to the United States here. Most other places in the world, lane filtering and lane splitting are legal. But in the United States, most states, it's illegal to lane split or lane filter. And if you don't know if it's legal in your state, look it up. I live in Florida, and I know for a fact it is not legal here, but that's something to expect as well. If you are in a state where lane filtering or lane splitting is legal, when you're stopped at a stoplight, generally, so if you see a biker behind you, you're meant to try and get out of the way. Lane splitting and lane filtering, when it's limited under those particular use cases in those states, it's only meant to alleviate traffic congestion and make it safer for bikers. You know, if you think of like people cutting it up on the highway, that's not what's legal. It is just a way for them to get through traffic to avoid getting rear-ended and sandwiched. You know, that example that I talked about earlier. That's what it's designed to get rid of. And then also traffic congestion. Because when we're thinking about the longitudinal space of a motorcycle, that forward and backward space, they're no longer taking that up. They just go up to the front of the line, they sit there, and then they take off. Potholes. Look at that, I rode in the center because there was a pothole on each side. So back to lane splitting, lane filtering. If it's legal in your state, you have to give way. It's usually baked into the laws that if it's, you know, safe conditions and there's a motorcycle there and they want to get by, you have to allow them to. And that's the point of the law. Now, if it's not legal in your state and you see someone filtering or you see someone splitting, as a car driver, the only appropriate reaction that you should have for that motorcycle is none at all. You shouldn't get mad at them. You shouldn't try to block them. If you really want to be nice, you can get out of the way for them. You're not required to. You're not obligated to. But if it's not legal in your state, you're not a cop. You're not a traffic cop. You're not there to give tickets or to police the road. You're there to travel. And if a motorcycle is breaking the law, lane splitting or filtering, you know, I get it. It can be startling sometimes, especially if you have your window down and there's a loud bike that just rolls on by you and you weren't expecting them. I get it. But it's not your job to do anything about it. Don't try to block them. Don't try to swerve into their lane. Because again, accidents on motorcycles are very severe, so much more than on a car. As a car driver, if you see someone who is lane splitting, who is filtering, whether it's legal in your state or not, you should never try to block them, never try to get in front of them. That is not your job. That is not something that you need to do. You should just let them be, let them do their own thing. They're taking a level of risk when they're doing that, and that's for them to have on their own. You should not contribute to that rider's risk. Whether they're in the right or wrong, it doesn't matter. On that note, if you are in a state where lane splitting and lane filtering is illegal, I encourage you to look into it and get a more positive outlook. If you see legislation coming up that's allowing for it, hear it out. You know, don't immediately dismiss it, because it is something that has and can save lives. So I highly encourage that you are at least open to hearing it, adding stipulations, but objectively speaking, not being able to lane split, not being able to filter is more dangerous for bikers. It leads to more injuries and more fatalities. That about covers it for me on where to expect motorcycles in their lane position, why they're in those different positions, and as a car driver, how to interact and be around those different motorcycles. Hello. I think that's my neighbor. So if you do have any questions, whether you are a car driver or a motorcyclist, if you have any questions or want to learn more about motorcycling in general, feel free to drop a comment, send me a message, let me know. And if you are someone who motorcycles, if you know someone who motorcycles, if motorcyclist safety is important to you, please share this video. Again, this is going to be information that's pertinent to the safety of motorcyclists, whether you are a motorcyclist or if you are a car driver. The whole point of this is to make things safer for motorcyclists. But with that, be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and follow me on my other platforms if you want to get more of the photography that I do or just the general tomfoolery. But I will see you in the next one.